Joining us now is Minority Leader of the House of Delegates, the new minority, Todd Gilbert, Republican from Shenandoah Valley. Todd, great to have you with us.
Hey, John. Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
All right, so Todd, let's just start before we get to the events here the past couple of days, Todd. I've been very critical of you, your leadership. I didn't back you for minority leader. As you know, I publicly endorsed your opponent for that, Terry Kilgore from Southwest Virginia, and I've been critical of your style, and I didn't think you were the guy. But you won, and so I appreciate your being with us, especially in the face of the criticism I've had. Tell us, before we get to anything, why is Delegate Todd Gilbert the guy to lead the Republican Party in the House going forward?
Well, John, if we're really going to clear the air, I think
yes.
I should ask you: is it true that you tweeted a reference to me as Lurch? Was that correct?
We were doing a parody of that you possibly could have been one of the featured stars in the old Addams Family segment, Todd.
All right.
Yes.
Well, that's fair, and frankly, I resemble that remark. So I take that in good spirit. But they say politics is show business for ugly people. So we're all living in glass houses when we do that sort of thing, I guess. But no, I didn't. I have a thick skin, and I'm a big boy, and I've been doing this long enough that I don't take those things personally. And I appreciate you having me on so that you and I could clear the air. Yeah, I think one of the criticisms of my style is that I only have one speed, and that I'm a sort of a full-time bomb thrower. I certainly have that in my wheelhouse, but I'm a skilled trial attorney too, so I know how to dial it back. And I think anybody who saw my questioning of Delegate Tran over her very extreme abortion bill last year knows that I can very calmly walk somebody where I need to get them without throwing bombs. So I think our role in our new situation is to still very much stand for something. I think that even though the Republican Party may have a branding problem right now, especially in suburbia, that we still inherently appeal to the values of everyday people. And nobody has spent more time, except maybe Speaker Cox, over the past years developing our policy agenda than I have, which involves very much kitchen table issues that affect people's daily lives and are not sort of the things you read about, the big fights we have over places where we can't agree with the other side. We've worked very hard to try to appeal to voters over the things that just affect them on a daily basis, who are maybe not as ideological as some of us. And I think we're going to try to continue that. We're going to try to be an alternative to the other side, especially in the face of the way they're being pushed so much to the extreme left, and just try to be the voice of reason.
So, Todd, I think you nailed it when you just said, and I appreciate your coming on, and all in politics, as in love and war, everything is fair, and we have been critical of your leadership, and we did do a parody, but I really appreciate your coming on because
glad to do it.
Todd, at the end of the day, we have the same goal, right? And
sure.
I was mortified that the Democrats took over the House. We expected them to win the Senate. I really thought we had a chance to hold the House. We didn't. And now you've seen Eileen coming in with what we other parody we do is we call her contingent caucus of the corn.
Right.
And you look at the leadership team she put together, the gun grab bills that they have. I mean, you've got Alfonso Lopez in Northern Virginia. Remember, Alfonso said only a month and a half ago, he said, give us a majority, and in 2 afternoons, we will undo what Virginia has done for the last 5 decades. He said 2 afternoons. So this whole idea that they're going to come in with some minor reforms, I don't think this is going to happen. I think what you're seeing here is a revolution of the far left. And many of these people, Todd, they've been funded by George Soros. They've been funded by Michael Bills in Charlottesville. They've had to sign pledges, right?
Planned Parenthood. They owe a huge debt to their donors, and their donors lie very squarely on the far left with a very far left agenda. Absolutely.
So, Todd, how do you combat that?
Well, again, I think that at the end of the day, they are going to overreach, and that they are so beholden to this left wing that is pushing them. Somebody asked me the other day, somebody very concerned about the same things you were just articulating, concerned about, their rights, their taxes, their future, their children, the future of Virginia, what it's going to look like. They were concerned and said, how many centrist Democrats are left in the legislature? And I sort of said there aren't any. I mean, there are liberal Democrats now, and there are very progressive Democrats now. There are no real centrist Democrats anymore. And so I think the buyer's remorse that many Virginians are going to feel when some of these extreme measures start passing is going to be felt fairly quickly, and our job is to stand in stark difference to that, and not in a way that even requires anything but looking reasonable and reminding people how successfully we managed Virginia as a majority, what good shape we're leaving Virginia in right now. We are the number one state to do business. We have a AAA bond rating. We put $1.4 billion in our rainy day fund. I mean, we manage Virginia very well, and we'll see how close they come to doing that.
You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network. We are with House of Delegates Republican new Minority Leader Todd Gilbert from Shenandoah Valley. Todd, a couple issues we really have to get to as we're all rolling in this weekend to the advance at the Homestead, the annual Republican retreat. One of the shocking things is Governor Northam has now reneged on the Medicaid expansion work requirements deal that he made. Can you expound on this?
Yeah, so, not the Medicaid expansion vote was something that was certainly very contentious within our own party even, but when Speaker Cox and others in our caucus decided to head in that direction, they tried to get some concessions from the governor, and did get some concessions from the governor to institute some more conservative reforms before expansion occurred, and one of those things was the work requirement. And I think I did not vote for Medicaid expansion for reasons that we don't need to go into unless you want to. But the real issue is that the speaker, I think, feels a real sense of betrayal from the governor, with whom he negotiated one-on-one. They had an understanding that this was a setting of a long-term policy, that the work requirement was going to be part of this going forward, and to have the governor just walk away from that after stalling, basically getting this work requirement instituted,
right,
is disappointing to say the least. Probably not surprising that he would wait until this opportunity came to go, oh, you know what, we're not going to do that now at all. And I mean, John, this was something, the work requirements were something that Bill Clinton supported. They are intended to motivate able-bodied people to take care of themselves and their families, and that's certainly, I think, objectively what everybody wants. At least every reasonable taxpayer wants people off the dole and taking care of themselves. And that's the long-term goal of the work requirement, is to get people back on their feet and have them taking care of themselves and their family. But, they're at the same time, if people don't need government assistance, why do they need to vote for Democrats anymore? So I guess that's where we find ourselves today.
Well, it's unbelievable for those of us that went with Kirk Cox like me and backed Medicaid expansion the second time around after fighting it for so long. The reason we backed it was to get the deal on the work requirements, right? I mean, I remember going on the radio every day saying, look, this is the right thing to do. I know we hate government expansion, but it's inevitable. It's going to help us in the 2019 election keeping the House. We got to take the issue off the table. We're going to negotiate in the work requirements. These are conservative elements of it, that this is our only chance to have these. And I remember being criticized for that. And one of the criticisms were, we're going to get beat because of it, not because you're backing it, which happened. And secondly, there's no provision that this can't get unraveled. Mm-hmm. And so both of the criticisms that were aimed at those of us that backed it have now come to pass.
Yeah. No, it's Governor Northam kind of showed us who he is again, that he was willing to say one thing and do something else, and
right.
When it was politically expedient to do it, and it's just it's terribly disappointing. This is why people lose faith in politics and politicians, because promises don't mean anything.
Todd, let's get to redistricting in Virginia and the Virginia 1 effort, which was passed in the House, I think it was 87-13, to have real redistricting reform done by the people, not by politicians. It passed unanimously in the Senate, and it passed, I think, 87-13 in the House. The only Republican voting no was Lee Ware. Now it's coming up again. It has to pass 2 times to get on the ballot as a constitutional issue in November. Dick Sazlo has already come on my show and said unequivocally he's going to back it. Joe Morrissey is going to back it. So it's going to pass in the Senate. That leaves the House. You had all these Democrats that voted in favor of it when they were in the minority. Are they going to vote in favor of it now that they're in the majority, or are we going to go back to that gets bottled up in committee and they just go back to gerrymandering? What happens?
Yeah, well, I mean,
Todd Gilbert.
Speaking of promises that you intend to abide by, I mean, most of our colleagues on the other side and have made ample public pronouncements about their support for nonpartisan redistricting, and they have voted for it. And, you know, we have, for their benefit, we have a great compilation of all their public pronouncements about how they support this. So I think it's going to be extremely difficult to walk back for the ones that want to walk it back. I think there are many of our Democratic colleagues who sincerely believe in nonpartisan redistricting, and you know, we Republicans, you know, we didn't wait to see how this election was going to go. We got ahead of this before the election, you know, and knowing that had we won the election, we could have very well had the decision point that they have right now, which is whether to do this or not. But we for lots of reasons, not the least of which is that it was just the right thing to do, and we saw that ultimately, that this is not a way to do this going forward, where parties just get to draw these lines and go through these court battles. And you know, so we were weary of the court battles at that point, and just decided we needed to go in a different direction. So we got ahead of it. We put forward this nonpartisan redistricting measure. Our colleagues on the other side voted for it. I hope they, you know, stick with what they've already publicly supported many times over, and I hope the leadership does the same and doesn't, like you said, bottle this up in some subcommittee to die, where people, you know, there are a couple folks that are already walking it back and trying to find a way to do that. But I think the majority of our colleagues have doubled down, and we hope they continue to do so. And this is absolutely the right thing for Virginia going forward, to you know, take the politicians out of the line drawing process.
The concern we all have is they've already lied now once. Now they're on the record as lying. The governor did that yesterday when he reneged on his deal. So he made a deal, he lied, he reneged on it. So now the concern is, okay, what other lies did they tell that they're going to renege on now that they're in power? Speaking about the Democrats, obviously. Look, I think this is an issue where I'm hoping that Democrats in the House, that at least 5 or 6 of them that's basically what you need. I think 6 or 7, that they stick to their guns and do the right thing, and we can get that on the ballot in November. Todd Gilbert, let's get to guns. Shockingly to me, incoming majority leader for the state Senate, Dick Sazlo, a very serious guy, right? He's been there since, I think, 1985. Been in the House, been in the Senate, been majority leader, been minority leader, comes out with a bill, SB 16, that basically, Todd, makes 90% of gun owners in Virginia an immediate felon the following day if that were to pass. Now, if this bill was coming from, I don't know, Mark Levine in Northern Virginia, nobody would take it seriously, right?
Right.
No offense to Mark, great guy, but just reality. But this is coming from the incoming majority leader and the senior member of both delegations.
No, it is striking that somebody of such authority and his level of leadership is putting forward something that would, like you said, make countless tens of thousands of law-abiding people choose between giving up their lawfully acquired firearms that they bought to protect themselves and their family, or being considered a felon and potentially going to prison for 5 years. And that's 5 years for every firearm that runs afoul of the cosmetic definition. It's 5 years for every gun magazine over 10 rounds. I mean, this notion, I know this is not polling well right now, but this notion that Dick Saslaw is going to tell any of us how many opportunities we have to defend ourselves. Can I please have 10 chances to save my life and my family's life, Senator? Because that's this arbitrary line that's being drawn, and anyone who owns a firearm that has a magazine capacity in excess of that government mandated 10 rounds is going to be a felon. And this has gotten, rural Virginia is on fire, John, with this the pushback, and I fear very much that this type of issue is going to separate us into two Virginias even more starkly than we have been in the past. And people are very upset in the rest of Virginia, not where Senator Saslaw is from necessarily, but the rest of Virginia is up in arms, and I don't mean that literally, but they are fired up. We had 1,000 folks show up for a Board of Supervisors meeting in my home county, Shenandoah County, for just a resolution to say we're going to stand up to this here in Shenandoah County, and that's happening in counties all over Virginia. So yeah, it's troubling, and I hope that cooler heads prevail, and that at the very least, we certainly don't think we're going to stop their gun agenda fully, but we hope that at least cooler heads prevail, and they're not prepared ultimately to turn, like I said, tens of thousands of Virginians, maybe many, many more, into felons.
Well, I'll tell you what, we had Scott Serville on a show yesterday from Northern Virginia, state senator in leadership, basically said that he could not back Saslaw's bill as it was written, and that they were trying to make changes to it, and he derided his leader for putting it out there. So we will see, Todd Gilbert, if cooler heads prevail. Only got time for one more question. Casino gambling in Virginia, everybody knows where I stand on it. I'm tired of going to MGM Grand in the People's Republic of Maryland or Dover Downs and seeing 70% of the plates in the parking lot have Virginia tags. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I don't know that it matters anymore. This is one of the many places where our colleagues on the other side are going to inherit all those decision points, and we will see. I think I know where it's going. The question is if we have casino gambling all over the place willy-nilly, or whether they intend to limit it to certain locations. I think it's coming, John.
Right.
I think they're going to do it. It's just how well they think through the implications, for what it means for the localities where it's going to exist, whether it is a net societal benefit or not. I've traditionally been against those things, but it's not for me to say anymore. It's for my Democratic colleagues to decide what's best, and I do think it's coming.
How do you win back a majority?
We are going to have to grind, and I think it starts with the advance this weekend. We're all going to be up there in Bath County. I hope to stop by and see you. I'm going to be up there Saturday morning to talk, and I think we really have to evaluate who we are as a party, where we are. I keep hearing people talk about messaging, and I understand all that, but you you have to understand, and your listeners need to understand, our Republican voters turned out in droves in this election cycle. I mean, we hit the gas, and they showed up, and they are fired up, and they do not like what's coming, and they support our president, and they want to show up, and they did show up in record numbers in an off year. And so I think our base voters still very much need us to stand for something, and we need to continue to be a stark contrast to the many of the ridiculous things that we're going to see coming from the left that may or may not play out in public policy. But we need to organize. We are out organized right now. We need to find new and creative ways to fund our races. We were just walloped by out-of-state money. We don't have those out-of-state sugar daddies like the Democrats do. We don't have a George Soros who just is willing to write millions of dollar checks or Bloomberg to get their agenda. I think we need to engage more donors nationally to say to them, this is you being involved in this thing that you don't think you have anything to do with is actually a way that you can use your vast resources to help save America. And we need to find those people. We need to have RPV sort of do a top-to-bottom, Republican Party of Virginia do a top-to-bottom assessment of what their role is. They have been very effective in the past. We have dealt with infighting for years, and that has to stop because, it seems like Democrats are great at circling the wagons, and we are great at circling the firing squad. And if there was ever a time where we should stop fighting with each other, it's now. But we've got to rebuild, I guess is what I'm saying. We've got to rebuild in the fundraising. We've got to rebuild in the organization. RPV has to be worth more than just, our bulk mail stamp that we get for running mail through them. And I know they want to be, and I know that Chairman Wilson is trying very hard to get us back on track there. But it's got to start now, and you never start rebuilding until somebody just starts the work, and the work has already started. And I look forward to joining some of my brethren in Bath County to talk about how we get there and where we go from here.
Incoming House Minority Leader Todd Gilbert, Republican, Shenandoah Valley. Todd, I want to thank you for coming on today. I'm glad that we cleared the air. I'm sorry I was so mean to you over the last few months. I'm sorry about that.
People do way worse than that, brother. I hate to tell you that, but and I know I'm not trying to dare you to do worse, but it doesn't bother me, and I'm happy to be on with you and look forward to stopping by and seeing you on Saturday.
All right. Well, we will see each other this weekend at the Homestead for the Advance. And don't forget to come to our late-night Whistleblowers Suite. Denver Riggleman, Pete Snyder, and me. We have our suite starting at 9:30 p.m. on Saturday. So when all the other suites are done, come to ours. We're the late-night suite. Todd Gilbert, thanks for being with us, and thanks for your honesty and your candor. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.